we'll have public comment, and I think we'll call on Mr. Tim Schaefer for 3 minutes.
As everybody's aware, recently several of us firefighters that used to work here, we had some concerns about something that was said, so we tried to send some information to educate the board about the time frame that everybody there probably knows what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna go into real good specifics tonight. I think it's only fair to let everybody think about things for a little bit, but civility, I think, is a very important thing, whether it's people with the bell bowl or our issues that we brought up. It's how you communicate with somebody that can be very important. You might disagree with a lot of things we say, you might disagree with things that they say, but I think I've never tried to disrespect anybody on that board. I always try to refer to people as Mr. Whatever's way. I've been trained as a former Marine police officer since 1986. I just recently retired, but I just didn't really appreciate the comments that came back from Mr. Dunn. Like you say, you like to talk to people out and over a cup of coffee. I would love to meet with you and just talk. And let me, not in 3-minute time sections, but to actually get our points across. We have some serious issues. But the last one, a lot of people on the board, I don't even know if you were familiar with a lot of stuff that happened during that time frame. We were here. I just looked up tonight and I found some letters that were sent to me by that individual that were, I think everybody would say they were kind of threatening and hostile. I'm not talking about you on this one, Mr. Dunn, but from that time frame. So I'm asking that I think there's a violation of the civil policy of how you deal with people. And I asked the board to take a look at that, and I leave that up to you. And I do have several people that are in our group there from out of state. They're asking you don't just hear from me all the time. Is there any way they could call in via Zoom and maybe you can hear from them where it's not just me or Greg, at this point. And I think then you could get a little bit of perspective. The one person that really wants to speak is Dylan LePen. He was an officer here about 10 years. He was a former retired out of the Air Force prior to coming here, 20-year veteran, was in some war zones. He's facing 3 different types of cancers, completely distinct. One is throat cancer. Finally got that worked out, and a couple years later, lung cancer popped up. Managed to survive that, and now he's faced prostate cancer. As these meetings go forward, I'm going to start naming all of our different officers that are affected by cancer issues. I believe this is so important, and I don't think the board's really taking it with the seriousness that we think it should be. But like everything board related, it's up to you. I'm just a private citizen. I don't have I don't know if Mr. Dunn speaks for the airport authority, and like what he says is actually what y'all represents you. But I'm not going to read what he said to me. If you want me to, give me a little extra time. I'd be glad to actually read what I'm talking about. Otherwise, and I'm going to leave it at that tonight.
Thank you. Next, we'll call on Don Miller.
Thank you for the work you do in the community and giving us opportunity to speak my mind. I was born and raised, and I'll be buried in Winnebago County, a place that I've loved all my life. I was fortunate to have parents that introduced me to the natural world and helped me experience its beauty. For that, I'll be forever grateful. I came home from college in the late 70s with a degree in biology. By this time in my life, I knew the forested areas and all the rivers of Winnebago County very well. I was introduced to the prairie ecosystem while I was away at college, so when I came home, I started to explore the prairie surrounding my home ground. I heard about the Phils and the work that they were doing at Natural Institute. In the early 1980s, a group was formed called the Prairie People. It was an assembly of dedicated volunteers doing restoration and educating others about local remnant prairies and their importance. It was a great time of enlightenment in my life. During the 80s and 90s, we spent time on numerous prairies throughout the county, including Bell Bowl Prairie. We hosted walks at these areas. We took people to see the rare Carolina anemone, cactus, prairie dandelion, and the Bell's vireo found here at Bell Bowl. We hosted one of our annual Prairie Appreciation Days. That was attended by 75 some people here at Bell Bowl. I have a vintage 1985 Bell Bowl Prairie t-shirt. It says, if you can't read it, Bell Bowl Prairie, Greater Rockford Airport, a protected refuge of the Illinois native species. It doesn't fit anymore. We only save and protect things that we understand, love, and have a connection to. Belleville Prairie is 8,000 years in the making. It's a place full of complex relationships between soil, weather, plant, animals, fungi, and so much more. As unique in this world as anything can possibly be. We can find a way to honor it, protect it, as well as have an expansion of the airport. I've been walking through Belleville Prairie for over 4 decades, and I know its true worth. And I wonder how many of you as board members or staff have been on it. Not just on it, but try to understand it, to appreciate it. David Brower has said one of the misgivings of the environmental movement is that we don't invite those holding political office or those in decision-making positions to get out behind their desks and visit natural areas that are so important to all of us. I worked for almost 3 decades at a place that had 15, 20,000 school-age kids, as well as adults that came through for education programs. But when it comes to protecting land, one needs only to educate 1 or 2 people about the importance of the property they own, and it can be protected. I'm sure a relatively small group of people made the decision to plot the destruction of this priceless piece of history and its future. And those of you in front of me tonight can't undo that decision of destruction. I've been on the prairie with previous airport administrators and staff members. I know that currently all the boxes have supposedly been checked to get the okay to legally desecrate this prairie, but that does not make it the right thing to do. I would like you to experience Belleville and have an understanding and develop appreciation for it. I would be glad to go with you on that exploration. As anyone here that's supporting Belleville Prairie, if you'd like to stand up, would you? Thank you for your time.
Of all these in our community. We are at the beginning of another mass extinction. During the past decade, and almost half my lifetime, 467 species have been declared extinct. Others have been brought to the brink, and many are seeing serious declines in their population numbers. Entire ecosystems are collapsing because of human development and expansion. As you are aware, right here in Rockford, on this property, an ancient 8,000-year-old prairie is slated for destruction. The prairie contains some of the most intact and undisturbed natural plant communities found anywhere in the state of Illinois. There is less than 1/100th of the prairie remaining in our state. And dry gravel prairies like Belleville, which rest on the substrate of bone deposited when glaciers retreated thousands of years ago, are almost extinct. There were once hundreds of acres of this land in the state. Belleville consists of less than 20 acres of the entire 80 acres remaining. It is also habitat for 9 state and threatened endangered species, as well as the federally endangered rusty patch bumblebee. The rusty patch bumblebee has declined 87% in the last 20 years. The species is likely to be present in only 0.1% of its historical range. These bees once occupied grasslands and tall grass prairies of the upper Midwest and Northeast. But most grasslands and prairies have been lost, degraded, or fragmented by conversion to other uses. They need areas that provide nectar and pollen from flowers, nesting sites, and overwintering sites for hibernating queens. There is most likely a hibernating queen in the soil at Belleville Prairie, but you still want to pave over it. You would rather talk about profits and revenue than look for the future of my generation and future generations that want to be able to see what a dry gravel prairie looks like and watch a rusty patch bumblebee fly from plant to plant. You pretend there are not solutions to having both the prairie and the airport expansion when they have been presented to you. You will not take the time to listen to these solutions. You are failing us, and the The younger generation is watching you and will not forgive you if you destroy the vocabulary. Thank you for your time.
We'll move on to resolutions and ordinances. Mr. Weston.
Motion to approve resolution 22-01, approving the professional services agreement with Strategic Aviation Solutions International, SASI, of Marco Island, Florida, effective January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023.
Second. Second.
This is what I referenced earlier, is an agreement with SASI, who's a professional cargo consulting company, cargo consulting company, which is, the principals are former CEOs of major airlines, and they have already begun to work with us in terms of guidance and counseling and forward thinking on cargo operations, as well as bringing potential airlines to the airport, which we're already in conversation with some of these airlines. So the staff views them as very, very important to us at this stage.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The resolution passes.
Motion to approve resolution 22-02, approving an amendment to AIA, document A-141-Exhibit A, establishing the cost of work for the Phase 2 International Cargo